This is Mrs. Packard. Brenda, you've got about 2 to 3 minutes if you want to take off.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. As a disabled veteran, former small business owner of 30 years, and a single mother of a disabled child, I could say that the reaction to this virus has been worse on us than the virus itself. On March 18th, I was the last patient at the VA before they closed everything down except for the emergency room. I had outpatient spinal ablation on my spine after 3 spinal fusions and multiple plates and rods on my spine. The procedure made my pain much worse, but telehealth was the only option I had since the shutdown. No follow-up care and no in-person visits. June 12th, which is 92 days later, is when I finally got some pain medication, which allowed me to even walk normally. I now have a follow-up appointment with my doctor on September 18th. Exactly 6 months later. Also, my left eye won't focus, and I had an appointment to schedule laser eye surgery on March 4th. All Kentucky clinics were closed before I could even be seen. They had to offer to send me to Ohio since the clinics in their state were open, but I still haven't been able to be seen. That has been 187 days. I'd like to point out that this entire time, the abortion clinics were completely open. Years ago, I was sexually abused and assaulted. I deal with PTSD, depression, and anxiety. A mask makes me feel trapped and have severe anxiety attacks, as do most people with severe trauma. However, the governor has made us seem somehow less patriotic and unsympathetic to others because of it. Even counselors will say to get out of the house, even if only to go to the store. Yet we are shamed and ridiculed and occasionally even photographed to be reported to Governor Beshear's hotline. Suicides are on the rise because people don't know how to deal with all this. Going to the store causes more problems than dealing with your depression. As another 16-year-old abuse survivor factually stated, the only good thing about a mask for me is not having to fake a smile. This has got to end. Thank you for allowing us to speak today.
If you would state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheena Birch.
If I could, before you start, I would like to make a statement, and it touches on a comment that Mrs. Pendleton just made. As chairman, I purposely tried to allow as much time in this committee meeting to allow for public comment, and that was purposeful because up until this point, no public comment has been allowed on this particular topic, so I felt that I would use all the time we possibly could in this meeting to allow for public comment, but I want to say that you can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sheena Birch, and I'm here to state my grievance. The Cabinet for Health, Family Services, Department of Public Health, Division of Epidemiology wants to add Regulation 902 KR 210E, the wearing of face coverings in public, in order to supposedly enhance the prevention of the spread of a so-called infectious disease named COVID-19. Firstly, there is no double-blind evidence that people, by wearing any old cloth over their face, over their nose and mouth while in public, does anything to enhance the prevention of the spread of COVID-19 or other so-called infectious disease. In fact, there is evidence through a study that wearing a cloth over one's nose and mouth does not prevent the infectious disease named flu. Furthermore, there is no evidence that wearing a face covering is healthy or even safe for people to wear during 8-hour workdays, or for children to wear all day during school, or for people operating CDL vehicles such as bus drivers. Wearing a face covering in public is only for specific religions, Halloween, or for criminal activity. This is reinforced by 200 KR 3020, Section 3J. Visitors shall not wear masks or hoods that conceal the identity of the wearer except for religious dress or generally recognized religion, or minor children celebrating Halloween, in state facilities or state grounds, which are managed by Cabinet for Finance and Administration. In my opinion, mask wearing and face covering promotes and supports criminal activity, such as child abductions, human trafficking, shoplifting, looting, etc. In conclusion, we know that this is a planned attack on our freedoms and Constitution. The CDC has planned before 2010 to get states to implement the fascist laws in accordance with their social distancing law project. But thankfully, the CDC is not the law of the land. This Face covering regulation is not only highly unscientific, but most importantly, is in violation of my federal and state constitutionally protected rights. 16th Amendment jurisprudence, 2D Section 98 concludes that no emergency has a just cause to suppress the Constitution. This regulation presented by the Cabinet is an example of severe government overreach, and not only do I oppose it, but I request and ask that this face covering regulation be hastily denied, removed, and stricken from the emergency regulation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Kimberly Turner. Thank you for having me, Mr. Chairman and other committee members. I, unlike many of my other speakers, do not have an actual form to read from. I'm coming today to talk to you from the heart and for the will of those people that I call my people in my community, in my church, and in my area that I live in. I have a disability, and this mandate, this face covering mandate, has cost me a job. I'm sitting 57 days without a paycheck. And where will I go to get another job when I still can't wear a face covering at the other employment? I've been ridiculed in a store, screamed at by other customers in the store. I've been asked to leave the store, even though I've stated I have a disability that I feel should be protected. I've been refused lodging in a hotel while traveling, 8 hours on the road. Reservation made in advance, and I was refused lodging, even though I stated I have a disability and am unable to wear the face covering. Again, I just come to you to ask, when does it end?
Are you there, Mrs. Patton?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. State your name for the record, and then you can proceed.
All right, wonderful. My name is Jenny Patton. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm grateful I have the opportunity to speak with you today. I'd like to take a moment to speak about why I'm here. It's more than talking about data and facts pertaining to mask wearing. It's me coming to you to help influence a decision that will shape the future of our state. This is a point in time. The decisions we make today will be far-reaching into our future. I cannot remember a time in history where so much has changed in our nation so quickly. With that said, decisions must be made from an objective point of view based on known and provable facts. I'd like to discuss an open record request I filed in July of this year following the governor's press conference regarding the mask mandate. During the press conference, he stated he had data supporting the mandate. In my request, I asked specifically for the data he referenced. When I received a response from his office, the letter stated, after a diligent search, the office of the governor is not in possession of any responsive records. I then filed an appeal with the AG's office, hoping they'd be able to assist. Again, the governor's office responded with having zero records. How is this not a violation of our constitutional right to have a mandate purported with zero evidence? Blanketed statements and assertions have no place within the leadership of our state. As a researcher myself, all claims must be substantiated, as opinions hold zero value or credibility. All claims which require adherence under law warrant validity. We have nothing indicating benefits of mask wearing, and in fact, numerous studies stating otherwise. There is zero peer-reviewed data indicating masks decrease viral spread. What we know is the following, and let me just reiterate, this is just a small list. I have multiple studies. Number one, masks are nothing more than a symbolic gesture. Per the New England Journal of Medicine, the journal goes on to state, in fact, focusing on universal masking may paradoxically lead to more transmission of COVID-19. Number two, from the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, it was stated cloth masks exhibit very low filter efficiency. Thus, even masks that fit well against the face will not prevent inhalation of small particles from the wearer. Number three, according to the Journal of Orthopedic Translation Research, surgical masks are intended to keep material greater than 1 micron from passing to a patient. COVID-19 viral size is 0.125 micron. Wearing a mask with expectations to decrease spread is irresponsible at best. This is the equivalent of using a chain link fence as mosquito netting. Number 4, dentists have coined the term mask mouth. This condition describes the increase in cavities, overall inflammation in the mouth, gum disease, which can lead to stroke and increased risk of heart attacks due to mask use. Number 5, and lastly, the psychological effects. According to the authors of a study, the amygdala is a chemosensor that detects carbon dioxide and acidosis to elicit fear behavior. They state the amygdala, which is located in the brain, processes and directs input and output, which directly correlates to fear behavior. It was found inhaled CO2, which is what we are breathing while masked, evoke fear in mice. Individuals are not only dealing with breathing CO2 while masked, but duly coping with the acquired environmental fear due to the general conditioned stimuli of COVID-19. The masks further create a visual conditioned stimuli, increasing fear and anxiety in many. This combination may trigger panic attacks and make patients with panic disorders extremely susceptible. In closing, I implore you to stop looking at your fellow citizens in this great state and country as viruses. My rights do not end where your fear begins. We must demand leaders of this state to make decisions based on known truth, evidence, and scientific data. Thank you.
Insinuating that anyone does not love their neighbor unless they wear a mask is foolish and divisive, and that is what this administration has been doing. I encourage everyone to listen and let their opinion be known. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous increase, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. So do not be afraid to let out your righteous groan. My vote, should we the people actually get consideration in this democracy, is for 100% personal choice for masks in schools. A 5-day-a-week in-person option should be made available in public schools all across Kentucky. If social distancing cannot be maintained, in-person schools should still be available and masks should still be a personal choice. I don't think masks are effective, but I've been following the rules for months out of compassion for people who are fearful and because I do not want to be judged as selfish, the narrative that this administration pushes. I think we should face this virus fearlessly, head on together without unnecessarily depersonalizing people. The only reason we should be mandated to alter any part of our daily lives from the way they used to be is if hospitals get overwhelmed, since this virus has such a high recovery rate. Otherwise, no mandatory masks and no mandatory vaccines. For many people like me in Kentucky, this is what it looks like for Kentucky to face this together with love. Thank you.
You have about 1 minute. If you would state your name for the record and proceed.
Okay, my name's Joan Gohegan. I'm a registered nurse and certified diabetes education specialist. I've had type 1. And when I used to work for the Northern Kentucky Health Department, and it was emphasized that patients had the right to self-determination. Their goals and priorities became our goals and priorities. Please consider that the citizens of Kentucky are your patients, and we all have the right to choose to wear a mask or go without. And we should have the right to self-determine that.
We know the facts of how lethal it is not. It is time to let the people follow the dictates of their own conscience. The time for restrictions is over. The sooner that Kentucky state government acknowledges that, beginning with this face mask mandate, the sooner her citizens will thrive. The government should be as good as its people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from members of the committee? Representative Marzian has a comment.
I just have a comment because I'm not going to convince these folks, and they're not going to convince me. But I think wearing a mask is such a small measure for our Commonwealth and our citizens to protect each other. And I'm also a bachelor's degree registered nurse, and I do use science, and I do believe science. But the one woman said that we have not passed this way before is totally incorrect, because there was a Spanish flu epidemic in 1918 where masks were worn because of fear and for death. We've had 200,000 people die in this country. We had a 1940, late 40s, 50 tuberculosis epidemic, of which my mother at age 23 was quarantined to Waverly Hills for 19 months, where she had just been married and had to leave the TB hospital to go back into the hospital to have her baby and then go back to the TB hospital. My grandmother was there at the same time and died. But tuberculosis was a deadly disease and there was no cure, just as COVID is a deadly disease and there is no cure. So I don't believe our children are being abused. I have grandchildren. They are making science experiments in the basement, and they're doing their research online. They're 8, they're 11. And if we can protect kids and families and each other, we need to do this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
In regard to the comments, I think that it would be impossible to address them individually. Obviously, there's not enough time. But it's just that I think the position that I would like to take and close with is that it is the position of the Cabinet of Health and Family Services, Department of Public Health. This reg was properly promulgated by all applicable statutes. And particularly going back to the beginning, the one thing I would like to address individually is Mr. Wee's comment. His reading of KRS 214020 is, in my opinion, not correct. That statute specifically gives this cabinet that we think there is a probability that any infectious or contagious disease will invade this state, it shall take such action and adopt and enforce rules and regulations as it deems efficient in preventing the introduction or spread of such infection or contagious disease within the state. It also gives quarantine power. My position is this reg is this E-reg was promulgated properly pursuant to this statute, as well as a proper extension of the executive power under KRS 39A. And I appreciate your all's time today very much.
This is not about sitting here today attempting to degrade our governor. I respect Governor Beshear. It's not to degrade Dr. Stack or anyone in the administration. Mr. Duke is certainly not meant to do that. And I certainly am not an attorney, but I really think this is an unconstitutional mandate that has been passed down, and this is just me saying this. This is not about winning or losing the next election that's coming up. But I believe this is something that the majority of the people in Kentucky, if given the opportunity to decide, would probably continue to wear the mask. But again, I think this is something that most Kentuckians feel like they could make that choice on themselves and feel as though they are being ordered to do this. And again, if I'm wrong, I'll take the responsibility for that statement. But I don't think most Kentuckians want to be told or ordered by this administration that they must wear a face mask, or their children or whomever.
We have to have a public comment period on this. I would encourage the administration to do that sooner rather than later so that we can adjust this reg in the meantime. But in the meantime, it's unfortunately, I think the courts are going to have to settle this, because it seems to be a lack of collaboration is going to eventually throw this into the courts to determine what is right and what is constitutional.
I will vote and explain. I vote aye on this motion for deficiency, And my vote is based has nothing to do with the face mask itself. It has everything to do with process and procedure. The basic purpose of this committee is to provide a process and procedural framework for the review of these regulations. I think we've done that. In all truth, if we vote for a motion of deficiency on this reg, it will still go into effect, still be in effect. And so I think it's important to point out that the members of this committee are the personal representatives of the citizenry, and that the senators on this committee represent 120,000 people. Representatives represent 42,000 people. And frankly, it's very disappointing that Secretary Freelander and Dr. Stack could not be in attendance to give us the information that we need to make an accurate decision on this important regulation. I feel like the committee has been totally ignored. We have no power to strike this down, and this committee will most likely to continue to be ignored. The problems with this regulation have been pointed out in great detail, but no matter how it goes, yes or no, it will be up to the administration to pull back the regulation and to fix the issues that have been detailed here in what is really the first public comment on this regulation since enacted. So I vote aye.